freedom, oh, freedom over me. Before I'd be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. Before I'd be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. And I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
Welcome, friends. Thank you for joining us tonight, live from Winona Street. Thank you to Chris and Leah, my ally band, for helping me out tonight. And in advance, thank you to Dan Stetzel, who recorded a couple piano tracks that I'll be using a little bit later. As we all know, there's been a lot going on in the last 2 weeks. Streets and parks in the country and around the world have been filled with folks demanding racial equality, demanding that we put an end to police brutality once and for all, and reminding us that even though society as a whole doesn't always prove it to be true, Black Lives Matter. Folks are having lots of conversations, some peaceful, in search of understanding, some in heated and bitter disagreement. Thousands of think pieces and opinions and memes are flooding our social media and the news, and it can be overwhelming and exhausting. But to be Black in America is to be overwhelming and exhausting. Change isn't easy. We've got to put in the work no matter how tiring if we expect to see results. I'm bringing this live stream to you this evening as a way to lend my voice to the conversation in the way I know best, through my art. I hope that this set of songs can remind us how we got to where we are right now. I hope that it reminds us of how much more work there is to do. And I hope that it reminds us of the pain, the beauty, the pride, the hope that is the distant and recent history of the Black experience in the United States. So let's start with some history. In spite of having inherited 2 plantations, Pierce M. Butler was in debt. To help pay off these debts, he auctioned off the human portion of his property over 2 days, March 3rd and 4th, 1859. 436 men, women, and children, all of whom had been born on his plantations, were brought to a racetrack in Savannah, Georgia, and held in the horse stalls prior to auction. This event, which would become known as the Weeping Time, was the largest slave auction recorded in the United States. Every hotel in the city was filled with potential buyers who would go to the racetrack ahead of the auction to scope out the merchandise. Buyers would forcefully open the mouths of slaves to check their teeth. They would pinch arms and legs to check for muscle mass. The slaves were told that they'd be sold in families, but the definition of family had a limited scope. It was limited to husbands and wives, mothers and their young children. Brothers, sisters, fathers, and older children weren't included. The auctioneer, known as Mr. Walsh, stood on a platform and he began the sale. Bid 'em in, get 'em in. That sun is hot and plenty bright. Let's get down to business and get home tonight. Bid 'em in. Auctioning slaves is a real high art. Bring that young gal Roy, she's good for a start. Bid 'em in, get 'em in. Now here's a real good buy, only about 15. Her great-grandmammy was a Dahomey queen. Just look at her face, she sure ain't homely. Like Sheba in the Bible, she's black but comely. Bid 'em in. Gonna start her at 3. Can I hear 3? Step up, gents, take a good look, see. Cause I know you'll want her once you've seen her. She's good and ripe, make a darn good breeder. Bid 'em in. She's good in the fields, she can cook and sew. Strip her down, Roy, let the gentleman low. She's full up front and ample behind. Examine her teeth if you got a mind. Bid 'em in, get 'em in. Here's a bid of 3 from a man who's thrifty. $3.25. Can I hear $3.50? Your money ain't earning you much in the banks. Turn around, Roy, let 'em look at her flanks. Bid 'em in. $3.50's bid, I'm looking for 4. At $400, she's a bargain sure. 4 is the bid, $4.50. 5. $500, now look alive. Bid 'em in, get 'em in. Don't mind them tears, that's one of her tricks. $5.50's bid, and who'll say 6? She's healthy and strong and well equipped. Make a fine lady's maid when she's properly whipped. Bid 'em in. 6. $6.50, don't be slow. 7 is the bid. Gonna let her go. At 7, she's going. Gone. Pull it on, Roy, bring the next one on. Bid 'em in, get 'em in. Bid 'em in.
Two young lovers are face to face. night, Afro blue. Whispering trees echo their sighs, passionate pleas, tender replies, shades of delight, cocoa hue, rich as the night, Afro blue. Lovers in flight, upward they glide, burst at the height, slowly subside, shades of delight, cocoa hue, rich as the night, Afro blue. And my slumbering fantasy assumes reality, until it seems it's not a dream. The two are you and me, shades of delight, cocoa hue, rich as the night, Afro blue, rich as the night, Afro blue. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? Paul and Silas bound in jail, had no money for to get their bail. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on. Paul and Silas thought all was lost. The dungeon shook and the chains fell off. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on. The freedom's name is mighty sweet. Soon enough we're gonna meet. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on. Only chain that a man can stand is that chain of hand in hand. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize and move on. Only thing we did was wrong, staying in the wilderness too long. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on. The only thing we did was right, was the day we started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize eyes on the prize and hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Roll, Jordan, roll. Roll, Jordan, roll. I want to get to heaven when I die, to see old Jordan roll. Roll, Jordan, roll. Roll, Jordan, roll. I want to get to heaven when I die, to see old Jordan roll. Brothers, you ought to have been there. Yes, my Lord. Sitting in the kingdom to hear old Jordan roll. Roll, Jordan, roll. Roll, Jordan, roll. I want to get to heaven when I die, to see old Jordan roll. Mothers, you ought to have been there. Yes, my Lord. Sitting in the kingdom to hear old Jordan roll. Roll, Jordan, roll. Roll, Jordan, roll. I want to get to heaven when I die, to see old Jordan roll. I want to get to heaven when I die, to see old Jordan roll. Widely practiced in the U.S. South from around 1877, which was the end of Reconstruction, through the 1950s. Lynchings were a method of social and racial control meant to terrorize Black Americans into submission and into an inferior racial caste position. Lynchings typically involved a criminal accusation, often dubious and absent of facts or evidence, mostly against Black Americans, but occasionally against whites that attempted to help the Black or those who were anti-lynching. The accusations were followed by an arrest and the assembly of a lynch mob, often aided by law enforcement, that was intent on subverting the normal judicial process. These horrific acts of racism and cruelty went well beyond simply hanging the victims. They'd be subjected to every imaginable manner of torture and dismemberment before being hanged and set on fire. Among the most unsettling realities of lynching is the degree to which white Americans embraced it as a joyous moment of celebration. It wasn't limited to just a half dozen Klan members taking their victims deep into the woods. Whole families, young children in tow, entire towns would come together. One editorial in 1930 read, "It was the show of the countryside, very popular. Men joked loudly at the sight of the bleeding body, and girls giggled as flies fed on the blood."
At the conclusion of a lynching, the crowd would pick through the ashes or further dismember the bodies to take home souvenirs and human trophies. Because lynchings were handled outside of the law and off the record, it's hard to tally the total number that have occurred and continue to occur, but estimates put the count at least 4,000. Southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood on the roots, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar tree. Pastoral scene of the gallant South. Them big bulging eyes and the twisted mouth. Scent of magnolia, clean and fresh. Then a sudden smell of burning flesh. Here's a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the sun to rot, for the leaves to drop. Here is a strange and bitter The children of children, by the time they're half grown, have habits like rabbits and young of their own. The children of children from their mama's laps hop down to the ground to be taken in traps. The children of children trapped by dark skins to stay in and play in a game no one wins. The children of children, while still young and sweet, are all damned and programmed for future defeat. The children of children are trapped by adults who fail them, then jail them to hide the results. The children of children unable to cope with systems that twist them and rob them of hope. The children of sin and ashamed keep pairing and bearing, and who do you blame? The children of children cry out every day. They beg you for rescue. And what do you say? Brown baby, as you grow up, I want you to drink from the plenty cup.
and keep you safe from harm. Oh, you little brown baby. Brown baby, it makes me glad that you will have things I have never had. When out of men's hearts all hate is hurled, you're gonna live in a better world. Brown baby. All right, Chris and I are going to rock out on this next song by a favorite new artist of mine, Amethyst Kia. I consider it to be a protest song, and I consider it to be a song of pride. And as a person of mixed race, I consider it to be an elbow thrown at all those folks who decided that they get to determine my level of blackness. An elbow thrown at all those who said, you ain't really black, and to the parents that thought I was black enough to demand I stop dating their white daughters. And to those non-black folks who've held their arm to mine and said, shoot, I'm blacker than you are. I wanna
Between 1947 and 1965, the city of Birmingham, Alabama was given the nickname Bombingham due to 50 dynamite explosions that occurred throughout the city. Some were an attempt to stop black folks from moving into white neighborhoods. Others were used against anyone working towards racial justice and desegregation in the city. One neighborhood experienced so many bombings, it received the nickname Dynamite Hill. On the morning of September 15th, 1963, a bomb exploded before Sunday morning services at the 16th Street Baptist Church, a church with a predominantly black congregation and a common meeting place for civil rights leaders. Around 20 people were injured, and 4 young girls between the ages of 9 and 14 were killed. Come round by my side and I'll sing you a song. I'll sing it so softly it'll do no one wrong. On Birmingham Sunday the blood ran like wine and the choirs kept singing of freedom. That cold autumn morning The Birmingham campaign, led by Martin Luther King Jr. and several other civil rights leaders, was a campaign of non-violent direct action, attempting to put an end to segregation and racial discrimination. It culminated in widely publicized confrontations between young black students and white civic authorities. The campaign eventually led the municipal government to change the city's discrimination laws. The entire country was erupting into civil unrest. A growing tide of protests, marches, demonstrations, and yes, riots were forcing America and its governing bodies to address its historical and continued embrace of racism and racist violence. The anti-racist voices grew louder and louder. The pressure on government was relentless, and relatively soon after the March on Washington, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was enacted. It was a great step forward, but there's still so much work to do. Let's help history repeat itself in this moment. It's not enough to not be racist. We must actively be anti-racist. We've got to call out racist sentiment whenever we see it and hear it. We've got to hold our local, state, and federal leaders accountable for ensuring new legislation that addresses inequality, voter suppression, police brutality, and an entire list of social justice concerns in this country. So whether your strength is in posting on social media, attending protests, self-education, educating your friends and family, or donating time and money, stay active and stay vocal. Don't just be the change. Demand the change. God of our silent tears, us this evening. Thank you again to Leah and Chris, my ally band. Thank you to Dan Schetzel at home. And before we go, I want to say Happy Pride Month to all my LGBTQ friends and family. And I want to sing one more tune, a rallying cry to make your voices heard, whether you're fighting for racial equality, gay rights, climate change, healthcare, the wage gap, or whatever cause is nearest your heart. This one will be turned up. Go out and tell our story, let it echo